Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to a 2022 edition of the Woke Bros. Of course, I'm Big Wos, aka Wazzy Lambre, joined as always by my brother on the west side of Los Angeles, Nando Vila. Happy New Year to you and to all.
It's a pleasure to be here. It's been a while. I missed you. It's been a few weeks since we've done a show, but happy to be back in the chair and excited for 2022.
Yeah, the holidays are over. We're done with the glazed hams and the mac and cheese and the carb loading. We're done with that. It's now back to business, back to basics. On today's show, Elizabeth Holmes of Theranos infamy. I think she's about to go to the pokey. She's been convicted on 4 out of 11 counts of fraud for defrauding investors. Me and Nando are going to sort of give you a rundown about the ridiculousness of that and what it says about Silicon Valley and just the state of our culture in general. But first, man, it's January 5th. We're on the eve of the 1 year anniversary of the craziest, most insanest thing that's ever happened in American politics, Nando. A bunch of kooks broke into the Capitol to take selfies with Confederate flags. A couple cops got killed, or one cop, a few protesters got killed. It was a fucked up day, but the way the mainstream media is covering it, you would think this was the day that rock and roll died or something. It's kind of crazy. Nando, look, usually on this show, I check the posts, I check the times, I'll check some of my favorite bloggers and substackers to see sort of pertinent things that we want to talk about. But in the mainstream elite political media, this is all they care about, period. Which I think is just it's kind of strange because I think at the time, Nando, I don't want to say we were dismissive, but we were kind of just like,
We were dismissive.
okay, we were dismissive. They kept calling it an insurrection and democracy is on the brink. And I was just kind of like, I don't know. It feels like you need the military on your side to actually execute a coup. Like the military, the police apparatus, like actually has to be on your side in order to defend your, seizing of power. And they had none of that. They didn't even have Mitch McConnell's support, much less the generals and like the people who were in charge of the weaponry that would go into suppressing, you know, any actual insurrection. So like I never understood the big panic about it. Obviously it was ugly and it was disgusting, and the people that participated in it should be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. But this as an existential crisis to American democracy felt kind of cheap and forced. What say you, Nando, 1 year later?
Yeah, I mean, there was a big debate around it at the time, and even in the run up to it, as to whether America was on the brink of fascism. At least is how we understand that term traditionally, meaning like basically a sort of authoritarian dictatorship with a totalitarian state that kind of seeks to dominate every aspect of life and quash out democracy and express violence towards minorities and things like that. And there's a question as to whether America already is just kind of like a sort of soft fascist state with the cops that we have and like our empire abroad and things like that. But to call that event a meaningful threat to American democracy is just insane to me, because it was really just kind of a group of a few hundred weirdos who just kind of got in, incredibly predictable and avoidable. Like they knew about this ahead of time. There was it was like all organized on Facebook out in the open, and they were more or less kind of allowed to go in there, where like you said, they took a few selfies and like took a dump on Nancy Pelosi's chair. And like, it's ugly and it's not a great look for America. But to say that event in and of itself is some sort of threat to American democracy is crazy. And the real kind of effect of it has been to just basically expand, police power in DC, predictably, but also it's been the perfect thing for Democrats to kind of use. I mean, all year I've been kind of tuning it out, but you just see headlines all the time of like new panel to, investigate what the hell happened and to hold people accountable. And of course, like, that no one actually is going to held accountable, that a few of those people are going to go to jail and whatever, that's fine. But the people like kind of quote unquote actually responsible for it, i.e., Trump himself, right? Like, if there was any meaningful accountability, the person who is at the top should be the person held accountable. Like, these yahoos who did this, like, are completely irrelevant and easy to throw to the wolves. There is going to be no accountability for any politician or any actual leader with actual power who participated in it. So therefore, it's not interesting or important or even like worth paying attention
Right.
to at all.
Yeah, and I mentioned it last night on my Twitch stream with TYT. Shouts to TYT Twitch network. Check out Wozni every Tuesday. Um, Here's the thing too. When we talk about democracy dying and being dead, I just watched Build Back Better get smashed with a 70% voter approval rating
Yeah.
at the behest of the corporate interests. If that's not anti-democratic, if that's not the death of democracy, I don't know what is. The will of the people has not been exercised in our government because it ran up against the will of the corporate interests and corporate power who have wholly captured our political class. It's just obvious, right? And the idea that you could talk about the death of democracy without talking about how undemocratic our political system already is and the needs that our systems already serve, meaning the needs of the corporate class. And again, you know, Joe Biden asked for this exorbitant military budget. Congress comes back with 25 billion extra. Okay, there's no 6 months of debate and hand wringing and hankering and is Halliburton, are their books in order? Do we need to audit them to make sure there's not a bunch of waste and we're not putting the taxpayers' dollars? And there's none of it. Raytheon, none of it. We don't even question the blank checks we write to these
Fully
industries.
bipartisan.
And it's fully bipartisan again. So the idea that democracy is dead, hell yeah, it's dead. Of course it's dead, but it has nothing to do with January 6th. Is the way our government functions, where like it's public information that Joe Manchin is fucking getting, he's getting donations from I think it was like something like 17 different corporations in the weeks leading up to and after. He basically came out and said, I'm going to vote against Bill Back. Like, this is public info. Like, this is just straight up quid pro quo, like straight up and down. And this is public info. This is public legalized corruption. And then, the idea that the media spends their whole day complaining about January 6th is it's amazing. Like, if you want to see anti-democracy, it's right. It's unfolding. It unfolded for you perfectly with Build Back Better, which again, when we do so much dick sucking about bipartisanship within the mainstream media, right? Whether it be cable news or the Times, the Post, Politico, you name it, all of those outlets, Wall Street Journal, you name it. We do so much like praising of bipartisanship, but a bill that has 70% approval rating amongst the American people, which we can't get 70% of people to agree on anything,
Yeah.
nothing in this country. So the idea that that's not seen as something bipartisan and therefore great, and that all the hand wringing about anti-democracy is about these fucking yokels storming the building and stealing the laptop. That's all you need to know about these cats.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. If you understand democracy as, broadly speaking, the will of the people being served,
Yeah.
or the public at large being able to have some meaningful control over their lives, then America is one of the least democratic countries,
Period.
certainly in the developed world. That it's just we have no actual labor power. It's almost impossible to imagine democracy without actual labor power, without organized unions, which allow people to fight back and win concessions in the private sphere, meaning like private corporations,
Mhm.
which control your life increasingly more and more, because it's not even when you're on the job anymore. Now you're off the job, but you have your phone, and they can still email you and bother you, and you're expected to respond. Back in the day, you left the office, and like how are they gonna find you? They're gonna call you at home, and so yeah, I mean, you hit it on the head with Build Back Better, that like we could win, we can elect a Democratic president. We have a Democratic Congress, and we have a Democratic Senate, and we can't even get 4 weeks paid leave for women who have babies.
Right.
That's like
And
the
again,
bare minimum. The bare minimum you could ever want. If anyone around you, like if anyone listening to has had kids recently, or people around you have had
four
kids,
weeks.
like I don't know how we don't even have that. We don't have 4 weeks.
Again, this is the richest, most prosperous nation in the history of the world. And just because this podcast is dedicated to pot shots at Sleepy Joe Biden, I just remember him campaigning on his idea to unite the country, unite the Congress. I'm gonna get Republicans to vote with me, which we knew was cap. It was ridiculous on its face at the time. This motherfucker can't get Democrats to vote with him, right? The likes of Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema are telling him to go fuck himself. So that's all you need to know about Joe, Uncle Sleepy Joe, and his empty promises. And what you said about, labor power is important. We're talking about the way that our politics work is anti-democratic. Of course, the way that most of our work lives work is anti-democratic. You don't get any votes. Like the
No.
employees don't get any votes on the board, don't get any say in how their jobs and how their lives are operated. Like they're just expected to go out there and be exploited, right? And so it's anti-democratic all across the board. And I feel like a lot of people, especially sort of self-righteous fucking lefties, will be like, oh, these fucking hayseeds in the middle of the country, and they're voting against their own self-interest. And it's like, are they, bro? Maybe
Yeah.
they're a lot smarter than you are in recognizing that this shit is a waste of everybody's time. If it doesn't
Yeah.
make a difference who's up there, that the corporations have everybody bought and paid for, and no little guy will ever get any recompense for, his blood, sweat, and tears in making this fucking country run. Maybe they're the ones that actually get it, and their apathy and their willingness to not participate in the farce that we call our political system is actually the right way to go. Not to say that I agree with that argument, but I think the argument can easily be made.
Yeah.
Okay, this
Because
idea.
at least those people are making the people you hate mad, and like that's the pleasure they get out of it, Like, I mean, that was a huge part of Trump's appeal. I mean, that's what I would always tell people is like the only way, like if you're anti-Trump, right, which I was anti-Trump, right, and still am,
And still
right,
am.
whatever, yeah, of course, but like if you're anti-Trump, you can't get mad. You don't get mad about it, like if you get mad about it, you're just feeding his power,
Right.
because most people understand he's not going to like deliver anything. I think most people have realized that politics doesn't deliver anything. When's the last time politics has delivered anything? And what it is now is like it's a contest over who gets more mad. Like when Joe Biden is in power, you're seeing like these like right wingers go apoplectic, calling him a socialist, and like they get mad at AOC. They call her like a Alexandria occasional cortex, whatever. And, like that's what politics is now. It's like, okay, well, it's kind of fun that your like enemies get so mad all the time, and then when Trump is in power, the libs are the ones who get really mad all the time, and the people in the middle of the country hate like snooty libs, so it's fun for them to see them get mad, and that's all that politics is. So like if you are against any of these things, like the last thing you can do is get mad about it. All you got to do is either ignore them or laugh about it, which is what we do. We laugh about it, but yeah, it's just that's essentially what politics has become. It's a game over who's going to get more mad about what the fuck's going on.
Yeah, and so again, look, if you're one of our listeners and you think January 6th is like this serious thing, like I'm not gonna ridicule you for being deeply troubled by January 6th. That's not what I'm saying. I just think it's the way the media frames it is this idea that it's an existential threat to American democracy, which I think we can quibble over whether that's true or not. But again, if that's the case, if democracy is what we care about and the will of the people being exercised, then man, we got a lot of shit that we can make front page news every freaking day.
Yeah.
Just the idea that these cats own, they can personally own stock in corporations. I mean, like,
Yeah.
how is that the will of the people being exercised there? This is you can just go up and down the list of shit that actually matters. And a lot of times I feel like people will say to us, like, oh, well, you're letting the Republicans off the hook because they're not doing for anybody either. And look, Mitch McConnell, when he thought this thing was gonna pass, started bragging about he started bragging about what it would do for Kentuckians. Like this bill that he had he wasn't gonna vote for, and he was gonna make sure that no Republicans voted for. He was bragging about what it would do for his constituents, these great things. Like, yeah, it's absurd the way the Republican Party handles governing. Like, we know that. But like, the people who claim to be the ones who are gonna walk the walk and talk the talk, and they're saving us from Republican rule and oblivion, for them to just sputter and look this utterly ridiculous, is disheartening.
Yeah. No, yeah. I mean, again, it's all kabuki theater. The media and the political class loves a good anything that allows them to do more kabuki to pretend that something's happening when really like nothing's happening, or the important things that happen just happen quietly in the background. Whether it was Trump's impeachment or whether it's January 6th or whatever. Like think about like Trump got impeached twice, like, and think about like how much coverage that got, and the Russia gate and whatever, like there's always something that is meant to be, the most important political thing in the world, when it has actually very little political import, and the actual things that are important just happen quietly in the background, and no one notices and no one cares. And that's the sad state of our politics right now.
And man, from stupid news to slightly more stupider, but just overall, just ridiculous. Elizabeth Holmes of Theranos, you guys have all seen the HBO doc. You've read countless profiles. You've read countless like accounts of the rise and fall of this fraudulent company. Of course, she claimed to invent a machine that would just prick your finger and do 50 million blood tests at once, thereby, basically streamlining American health as far as your blood work is concerned. And it was supposed to be revolutionary. Of course, every single medical expert that ever looked anywhere near this thing was like, that's dumb. That's not really how blood tests work. Like, it was just a fraud from the start. But this woman was able to raise billions of bucks, hundreds of millions of dollars in investment from Silicon Valley for a farce. She got a bunch of prominent people on her board, and like this shit was just all bullshit. And I think why me and Nando wanted to talk about this, it's indicative of a couple of things. One, obviously, I think by now we're past the point of thinking Silicon Valley culture is anything other than a fucking joke. That these people are just complete dorks with their heads up their asses, lack any self-awareness or emotional intelligence, and they're all just shining their own asses or whatever. That's one. And two, just the amount of wealth that's concentrated in that area of the country and in that sector, that these people can throw billions of dollars on fire and it not matter to anyone. It's not like, remember when not the Dogecoin, when the AMC and GameStop thing happened, and all of these people conspire on Reddit to take down this hedge fund or whatever, and it's like, oh shit, they made a terrible investment, or they made something that they thought was a sound investment. Now it's tanking that company. They need to be rescued. It's like awful, right? And like this company almost died from it, from this horrible investment. Silicon Valley can just burn money on WeWork and burn money on Theranos, and it doesn't fucking matter at all. Like venture capitalists and these hedge funds, like they can burn as much money as they want on count, like which, and again, like the Theranos thing is so instructive because this shit never made any sense. Nobody
Yeah.
vetted it, and they were able to raise hundreds of millions of dollars behind a fraudulent idea. And again, the worst part is like nothing. It's a drop in the bucket. That's how wealthy these people are.
Yeah. No, and I think like if we're trying to get like analytical about it, I mean it's fun to watch, this all happen. It's completely alien to our lives, like what I mean? Like it's people only get held accountable in America if they fuck over other rich people. I mean that's why Martin Shkreli was in prison. That's why Elizabeth Holmes is going to prison. It's like when the victims are poor people, it doesn't matter. If the victims, quote unquote, are other rich people, then it does matter. Like I think it's instructive that Elizabeth Holmes was found guilty of defrauding investors, but she was found innocent in defrauding patients, which is it just shows you how the justice system works. Mm-hmm. But I think with the broader thing with Silicon Valley that you can see in the last few years is that there are a handful of companies that are insanely powerful and wealthy. Right? Like I think Apple just became this week the first $3 trillion company in the history of capitalism. Good for them. Congratulations, Apple. Facebook and Google are not far behind, and that there's these kind of giant monsters at Silicon Valley, and a lot of people in Silicon Valley, as a result of all that, are very, very wealthy. The thing is, everyone's looking for the next one of those things. Like everyone's looking to get in on the next unicorn, as they call it. Right. And there are no more. There are no more because essentially those small that small number of companies have conquered the internet.
Yeah,
they exactly. They own everything. And there are no new productive outlets. There is nowhere for this money to go anymore. I mean, Apple famously has more cash on hand than it's insane how much cash on hand they have. It's because they have no productive investments to put it in. And so if Apple's making that decision, you can imagine what investors have to do. They have to try to figure out value where there is no new productive place to put it. Which is why you're seeing this whole fucking crypto nonsense. Which is why you're seeing this whole NFT thing. It's because they gotta put it somewhere. They have to create something
to spend it on. Like they literally have to find ways to waste their money. They're that obscenely rich, which again speaks to all of the themes that we talk about on this show all the time, which is just like, I don't know how you justify the existence of these people's wealth, right? Like it's not doing anything to benefit anybody. And as a matter of fact, they're not even hoarding it. Like at least you could be like, all right, they're hoarding it and saving it for future generations or whatever. Like, oh, my ancestors are gonna. It's just like, bro, there's no way for me to hoard all of this. I have to unload some of it. Like it's so ridiculous. Like it just kind of speaks to the obscenity of some of the wealth in this country, right? And meanwhile, our Congress can't pass a child tax credit because Joe Manchin thinks that crackheads are going to be using the money on crack.
Right.
$300 a child per month on crack.
Yeah. No, I mean it's crazy,
bro. Like, just think about that for a second, right? Just think about that. Like, let's just say that's true. We don't even know. Like, let's just say, 5% of the population of people that are going to be using it are, crackheads who are going to use it for.
It's way too high anyway. It's like 0.0005.
It's way less than that. Let's just say it was 5. Let's just say 5% of this shit was wasteful. And 95% of the people that are using it to support their family, to, be able to go out and stimulate the economy in other ways and all of that shit. It more than justifies itself, like, period. And of course, obviously, the percentage is way less than 5%, but like, this program would more than justify itself.
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is, like, we have politicians who feel comfortable going out and being like, crackheads are gonna buy crack with $300 per child a month, not a week, a month, $300 per kid a month. And these homies get to, waste their money on shit like Theranos, where this chick is doing Steve Jobs cosplay, and she talking about saving humanity. Like, I mean, it's like, anybody could look at this and be like, this is dumb. What are we talking about? Like, even Apple, the most successful tech company in the history of tech, didn't save the world. They made nice phones, and I'm talking to you from a dope Apple laptop, but they didn't save the world. The greatest tech company of all time just made a cool gadget. I think it's absurd.
Yeah. No, it's just, there's so many things about it that are just infuriating. For example, Adam Newman, the founder of WeWork, I just saw there's a big article in the Wall Street Journal that he's planning his next